Oh God, this whole thing is such a sordid mess, he doesn't even know where to start. He guesses some background is needed to even begin communicating the emotional impact and complication his wife's betrayal has created in their lives. Maybe his experience isn't that uncommon, but it sure feels that way to him. The first thing that needs to be said is that him and his wife are deeply involved in their religious community. This is going to be a major factor in understanding the context, so please bear with him if the details seem a little strange or too familiar. He will do his absolute best to only explain the necessary details and keep from including value judgment where the religious elements are concerned. As of today, they have been happily married for almost 19 years. They have 5 kids. Their oldest is 16, their youngest 2. She has been an amazing mother to them the whole time. They're live with her parents in a house that he built with her father, who is now struggling with dementia, designed to accommodate both their families, and that they helped pay for, which is going to severely complicate things once he explains how this all went down. To make sense of the current situation, though, he is going to have to start back in 2018. 2018, his wife was a teacher at a religious private school for several years to get free tuition for their kids. For the last 2 years, she'd taken 2 students, in particular, under her wing. Both kids, a girl and a boy, come from abusive homes, and both had experienced an affair trauma in their past from relatives outside the home. They were both falling apart and failing out. His wife decided to do what she could to help them. She tutored them, talked to their parents, and got them into counseling, and by their senior year they had both done a complete 180. By the time they graduated, they were both spending a lot of time at their home to escape the unhealthy environments they lived in. Shortly after graduation, his wife told him she felt prompted to offer them both to come and live with them. This was also when she was let go from her teaching position for unrelated reasons. They were both 18 and wanted to get out of their situations as fast as possible. He wasn't sure how he felt, but he wanted to support his wife in the good she was trying to do, so he agreed. They were good kids, helpful, and didn't cause any trouble for them. They quarantined with them through COVID and were a huge help when they all ended up getting sick. It didn't take long for them to start calling their mom and dad, and they basically adopted them into the family. In their faith, it's traditional for young men to serve a proselyting mission, which they pay for themselves, when they turn 18. Around the end of 2019, the young man left for his 2-year mission, and the young woman decided to try and reconcile with her dad, who had divorced from her mother while she was living with them. At the time, he was relieved when he left. Despite him generally being polite and helpful, he had just started rubbing him the wrong way. In retrospect, he thinks he was unconsciously already noticing warning signs that something was wrong. In particular, he was too attached to his wife. He followed her around like a lost puppy and constantly wanted to talk through his feelings about his family of origin, mostly just with her. He don't think they were having an affair yet, but it's clear their relationship was becoming too close and intense. Prior to them moving in and for some time after, they had a healthy and fulfilling affair life. Consequently, his wife was pregnant with their 5th child through most of 2019 and gave birth about a month before the AP left for his mission. It was around this time that all intimacy stopped. He didn't think too much of that because her libido tanked for several months while nursing their other kids as well. The problem this time was that it never came back. Then they started having other problems, tension in the marriage that he couldn't understand. She kept criticizing him or bringing up issues but refusing to articulate what resolving those issues would look like. Finally, after several arguments, and him trying every way he could think of to resolve their conflicts, she just said they don't have that kind of relationship anytime he mentioned their intimacy issues. He started reading relationship books, especially the Gottman books, but he couldn't get her interested in reading them with him, or in working on their relationship really at all. At this point, AP had been gone on his mission for about a year. Missionaries are encouraged to call home once a week, and since they were essentially his only family, he called them. He was kind to him, and listened, gave advice from his own mission experiences, but he never really developed a parental-style bond with him. His wife, on the other hand, completely adopted the role of a mother to him. She fought for him, advocated for him when he had a spot of health problems, went to her extended family when he needed help paying for his mission, and became extremely offended when anyone suggested she was anything less than his mother. To be honest, he chalked up a lot of warning signs to her adopting a mother role for him. He'd had a deeply troubled youth and was dealing with nightmares. He probably has a bit of PTSD, so he didn't think it was all that strange when he was calling quite a bit more than once a week, or at odd hours. She was just talking him through his emotional issues. Fast forwarding a bit, Opus and wife relationship kind of normalized. Opus stopped trying to initiate intimacy, which reduced their conflict. He continued trying to improve their relationship, making sure to text her during the day and say he loves her, doubling down on trying to follow through on things he agreed to take care of, taking her out on dates, all of which she tolerated but found exasperating. As AP's homecoming date approached, she began complaining to him increasingly about their real kids and becoming increasingly excited about AP coming home because he is actually helpful. And Opus began to dread the day AP would come home. He could see signs that it would exacerbate their relationship issues and cause problems for our kids as she showed him blatant favoritism. 2022, about 6 months before AP's homecoming, his wife asked him to look at an issue with her phone. While he was looking at it, he saw a text coming from him and noticed that the guy called her his love and called her beautiful. His heart dropped into his stomach and alarm bells started ringing loud and clear. Looking back, this was when he should have confronted her, but he didn't have time to look through her texts right then, and he didn't want to make unfounded accusations. For some reason it didn't even occur to him to just bring it to her and ask, "What the hell is this all about?" He decided to wait until he could properly look at her text messages, but he didn't remember her passcode, and he didn't want to tip her off that he was suspicious. Over the next couple months, he convinced himself that he was reading too much into it. If there was one bedrock of their 18 years of marriage, it was that he could trust his wife. Her whole personality is built around being trustworthy and fiercely loyal. He told himself that he was probably developing an unhealthy attachment to her because of his emotional issues, and that they would address it together when he got home. Well, he got home in the last week of October, and at first, he thought his fears appeared to be unjustified. He started feeling guilty for not trusting his wife. Everything about their relationship appeared to be that of a mother and son. She scolded him for inappropriate jokes or arguing with the other kids. They put him in the chore rotation with the other kids. When his mother-in-law expressed concern over her going places alone with him, she completely flipped her lid and expressed how entirely inappropriate that kind of concern was since he was practically their own child. Then, in the first week of November, she asked him to look at her phone again and gave him the passcode. He looked at their most recent text messages and saw some things that hinted they might be working toward an emotional affair, but honestly, it didn't seem as bad as he was afraid it might be. It did seem strange, though, that the message history was shorter than it should be, as if she had deleted them all recently and only had a few days' worth of history. About a week before Thanksgiving, she blew up at him as they were going to bed because he had put his arm on her stomach under her shirt to snuggle the night before. She was irrationally angry about it and threatened not to let him sleep in their bed anymore if he did it again. That night he couldn't sleep. His stomach was churning, and he felt sick. Finally, around midnight, he carefully got out of bed and took her phone into the bathroom. Sure enough, now there were messages unmistakably about them having an affair in the more recent text history. She didn't have Facebook Messenger installed, but he saw that she had Facebook open on a tab in her browser. So he checked Messenger there, and they had been chatting for months before he got home about how excited they were to have an affair when he got home. And to really just drive home the weirdness, mixed in with all the affair talk are conversations about how proud of him she is for serving his mission and following all their religious cultural norms after getting home. They even make plans to attend their temple together right after talking about their orgasms. It's obvious they're completely blind to their own hypocrisy. They've constructed a delusional fantasy world where they are somehow able to entirely ignore the disconnect between what they're doing and what they believe. Opus is not making any universal claims here about right and wrong, but it's hard to understand how they can act so inconsistently with their own professed worldview and still think they are good, pious people. It just blows his mind. Needless to say, reading their text messages felt like his entire world was falling apart. Knowing is so much worse than suspecting. He can't eat, he can barely focus on work, he keep having panic attacks, and his blood pressure is through the roof. They have had such a busy holiday that he hasn't confronted her yet, but there has a weekend to themselves planned for this coming weekend, and he is going to have the conversation there. Despite thinking of almost nothing else for the past 2 weeks, he has no idea what he will say, and no idea how it will go. Despite everything, he doesn't hate her. He plans to offer the chance to reconcile on the condition that he leaves the house, she cuts off all contact, and they go to couples therapy, but he honestly don't feel confident she will choose that. This is going to be such a complicated mess if they end up getting divorced. TL, Doctor. So, to sum up, his wife of 19 years is having an affair with a man who was practically our adopted son and her former student. Also, he lives with us. She's been gaslighting him for at least a year, making him believe he was the cause of their intimacy issues. They already have 5 kids, the youngest being only 2 years old. They live in a house that they built and own with her parents, who live with them. And somehow, despite extramarital affair being extra taboo in their faith culture, they're both convinced they are completely good, pious people despite going at it like rabbits. He will be confronting her this weekend and he have no idea how it will go. FML. Oh wow. Thank you everyone for your responses and advice. He has already taken screenshots of her texts and have them stored in his OneDrive vault for safekeeping. He has seen a lot of advice to see an attorney and to get a paternity test. He has been thinking long and hard about the possibility that his youngest isn't his. His conclusion is that he doesn't care. She just turned 2 and she's the brightest thing in his life right now. She's his daughter no matter what. He has talked to an attorney briefly on the phone, but just to make sure AP can't demand paternity rights if she does turn out to be his. And apparently that's not a likely concern in his state because she's over 2 now and his name is on the birth certificate. He does realize, though, that he will have to get her tested eventually because if she's not his, she'll need to know for medical reasons. He is not looking forward to that. As to whether he should offer reconciliation, the advice not to for now makes sense to him. His question is, should he still confront her this weekend or should he go straight to blowing everything up? He can't hate her, and he have no desire for revenge, but he also won't be her cuck, and he won't lie down if she goes on the attack. He still has his own self-respect, and he have to think of his kids. Okay, well, the panic attacks are back. Some of you have made some excellent points about this amounting to abuse and manipulation of the AP. For clarification, it seems unlikely that he would have been underage when they started having an affair. He is turning 21 this month, but he is going to have to dig into that, no matter how much it hurts. So, here's his rough to-do list for the short term. Get an actual consultation with an attorney, maybe more than one. Open a new bank account and change his direct deposit over to that. Get a paternity test for his youngest and discuss the results with his attorney if she's not his. That would move their earliest active affair to at least February of 2019. Still post-graduation, but not by much. Change a crap ton of passwords and make sure her email is not listed as the recovery email. Confront them both with her parents in the room all at once. Kick at least him, and possibly both out that night if her parents will support me where she's concerned. They will be on board with kicking him out. Depending on her reaction during the confrontation, file for divorce immediately. Alternatively, if she is remorseful and immediately agrees to the requirements, they begin the reconciliation process. Sign up for counseling because he is going to be a complete wreck. He is antithetical to a scorched earth kind of guy, so what he must do here is going to be extremely hard for him. His state is a no-fault divorce state, so unless there is a compelling reason not to, they will want to do 50/50 across the board. He is okay with that in principle, but that will depend a lot on whether she goes after me and what his attorney says once he has discussed the full details of the affair. There may be factors he is not aware of that would affect the state's judgment. He asks if he is missing anything from his immediate to-do list. Thanks again for all the amazing advice here. He appreciates everyone weighing in and he is reading everyone's comments obsessively, so please keep them coming. Comment: you need a VAR with you, and you need to tell a couple of friends exactly what's going on. And you need to have written out with an attorney what should happen to your estate if something happened to you. Original poster: forgive his ignorance, but he is not sure what a VAR is. It's not coming up in the abbreviations. Comment: no WS is immediately remorseful when confronted. She may be regretful. She will certainly be angry, defensive, and covering her arse. Do not offer reconciliation. It's a process that takes years, and you can't begin that process until you have the entire truth. And you must have a wife who is completely honest and willing to work on becoming a safe partner. A VAR is a voice-activated recorder. Original poster: thanks for the clarification. It's good to know what to expect. Also, to everyone concerned for his safety, it's amazing how close one can feel to a new community without knowing any of you personally. He appreciates the warning and will take precautions to make sure they are safe. That's partly why he decided to have the conversation with her parents present. But the VAR is also an excellent idea, as well as making sure a friend knows when and why he will be having the conversation. Hi everyone, just checking in. You've all given him a lot to think about. Right now, he is just processing everything he have read here and waiting to see a few attorneys this week before he makes any rash decisions. As to the question of affair, he is sure he will have a better idea once he has talked to an attorney. But from where he is at now, the evidence doesn't seem to point to that. And even if there was affair, he doesn't see how he prove it. He is not inclined to make any unsupportable accusations to the family judge if it would just make him look vindictive. He is sure they hear all kinds of crazy accusations on the regular, most of them complete fabrications. Also, one point of clarification: the girl they took in is not his sister and she no longer lives in their home. She went home to try and build a relationship with her bio dad after he divorced her bio mother, who was emotionally abusive. They are still on good terms with her and encouraged her to try and reconcile with her dad when she expressed interest. She's leaving for college soon and looks to be on track for a good life. The AP's life, on the other hand, is probably ruined no matter what the outcome of the next few months turns out to be. Comment: I think the concern here is what kind of liability might your wayward wife face if things blow up. Could she end up facing criminal charges? Might the AP decide to sue her in civil court? Right now, your finances are tied to hers, so I don't think it's much a matter of what you might use in a divorce scenario, as much as how much potential liability she caused to your family's financial security. While I agree that she has predated upon the AP and taken advantage of his immaturity, that's not something you can change. You don't have a magic wand or a time machine. What you can do though is make sure that you've protected your assets as best you can. You've got your own children to consider and their quality of life. Original poster: he completely agrees, which is why, as painful as it is, he is waiting until he has talked to the attorney before he tips his hand. When he moves, it will be with a plan, informed, and to win. His kids are his highest priority, and he can't afford to lose everything because he acted rashly. This situation is more complex than most and he need to be playing for keeps. And to those who are concerned about AP being near his kids, he doesn't believe he is a clear and present danger to them or him at the moment. The danger will come when he has upset the status quo, and he have to be prepared and have a plan in place to minimize everyone's risk once he does that. He will only get the benefit of surprise once, and he have to use that to take the initiative and keep it. Comment, how are you holding it together and maintaining some semblance of normalcy during this purgatory you are living in? Surely your wayward wife must intuit or suspect that something, possibly the jig, is up. Original poster, he has ADHD and have dealt with social anxiety for most of his life. He has a lot of practice pretending to be fine when he is not. She's noticed that something was wrong once or twice, but he just blamed it on work stress and have a pretty good handle on himself for now. Lots of mindfulness meditation and breathing exercises in the bathroom when he can't deal. Pouring his attention into the kids helps, too. Hopefully, have his ducks in a row before this weekend, then he can start the process for real. Comment, on your comment on I'll only get the benefit of surprise once, and I have to use that to take the initiative and keep it. My redo is to reframe that to something like, I'll focus on what is best for me, and keeping that focus will enable me to have the initiative as long as this goes on. Right now, the consensus is to hold off confronting until you know what you're dealing with. Surprise may get you some revelation that are helpful, but you'll be able to keep the initiative by focusing on achieving your goals. What do you want that you can get? Are you open to R? If your wife goes off with this poor guy, are you willing to wait? If she wants to come back a few months later, would you be open to that? Do you want a quick D? All of those can be honorable, effective courses of action, but you have to choose which one you'll adopt, and you have to follow the course honorably, and you have to make it effective for yourself. In my opinion, you need to act pretty quickly, because it's odds on that your W is hurting this guy because getting it out into the open is good for you. But you don't need to decide on what confrontation means to your him yet. It may take time for you to make those decisions, and your wife's response might affect your choice. Maybe she'll defend herself and her actions and her true love. But what if she responds, what have I done? How could I have taken myself so far off course? The decisions about him will affect decades of your life. It makes sense that they're not easy choices, and it makes sense that these decisions take time. But attempting to separate your wife from this guy is something that is best done ASAP. Comment, in my honest opinion too, much weight is placed on evidence or proof. It's enough that you are convinced. It can help if you have enough to convince stakeholders to the family such as your or her parents, but at the end of the day it's enough that you are convinced. Unless infidelity was to factor in divorce. In that case you need an attorney's advice on what is considered proof enough, and then work towards getting that level of proof. It's not common that infidelity factors at all in divorce though. It's not as if you state she's having an affair and if you can't prove it, she isn't. She can deny all she wants. All that's really needed is that you are convinced. This is quite important. We have had instances here where everything shouts affair, just like your case does. Everything you have so strongly indicates your wife and the are having an affair. Now, imagine you confront her with her parents in the room. For a minute let's say she denies, and when you pull out the text she minimizes and says they are fantasy. And that actually nothing ever happened. It's not as if her parents are the jury and they get to decide if you or she wins. It's not as if they decide she wins and that makes you crazy and you have to settle with their decision. It's not as if when asked by concerned friends and colleagues that you have to pull out pictures and DNA evidence. It's enough that you are convinced. If you are convinced she's having an affair, well, that's it. That's all that's needed. Is reconciliation possible? Well, yes, but it's not necessarily what you should do. What you do next is dependent on several factors. One of them being what you want, but no less what you are offered. Like if she denies the affair, you can't reconcile. If she isn't willing to reconcile, you can't reconcile. If she were to fess up and convince you that she wants this marriage, then you could reconcile. But only if that is what you wanted. There is nobody holding a gun to you demanding you reconcile, not any more than you should allow anyone to hold a gun to you demanding divorce. Fortunately for you, the first steps after confrontation are basically the same irrespective of R or D. Personally, I think we BS often try to set too many conditions for our spouse on confronting. I think we should focus on what we can control, and that us and our actions. A typical confrontation speech would be something like, "Wife, I have discovered that you are having an affair with I have enough evidence to make this totally irrefutable and know that you two have had an affair multiple times, shared intimate texts and messages, and that you have broken the marital vows repeatedly. I envision growing old with you but have realized that there is something immensely worse than losing you, and that is sharing you. I don't share my wife. I hereby relinquish any expectations or demands I can make on you as a husband. In my eyes you are no longer bound by the expectations of a wife, not any more than I am your husband. There is a legal procedure that needs to take place, and that procedure controls how we divide assets, arrange custody and all that. There is no rush per se, so I will start that procedure once I am emotionally in a better place to do so. You are free to be with You can date, move into his bed, go to temple together, make plans for the future, but not as my wife. It would be respectful to not be too obvious around my home and our children, but in my mind, you really aren't bound by your vows as my wife. If you want to have any chance of saving this marriage, you need to show me with words and actions. I need the absolute truth down to the detail I demand. I need total accountability and total NC with There is no guarantee, but a basic principle in my life is I don't share my wife. and then you go and watch TV or wax the car or whatever. You have stated what you are going to do and what she can do if she wants the marriage. You then control your speed depending on her actions. Depending on local laws, I'm fairly certain you can legally demand leaves the house. This is not necessarily straightforward though. If he has a legally registered residence in the home, you might not be able to kick him out per se. That's something you need to clear with your attorney. Same with your wife. Be very careful here. If has a legal residence in the home, if your wife has one too, and if her parents are owners, definitely confirm your options with an attorney. The living pattern might add complexity to any future steps. Don't expect her parents to favor you over her if you do decide to divorce. Friend, you have options. They might not be nice options, but you have a lot of control over how you play the crappy cards you were dealt. Original poster, thanks for the advice. That seems like a healthy way to approach this mess. He was open to reconciliation at first, but as he progressively comprehends how genuinely destructive her behavior has been, he doesn't know anymore. It's reassuring to think you don't have to know for sure before the confrontation. Thanks for your comment as well. You provide some much-needed perspective. He will try to keep everyone's comments in mind as he proceeds. This forum has just been a fantastic support as he figures out what he wants and need to do about this situation. Hopefully, he will have more to report soon. Thanks to everyone for all your comments and insights.